welcome to a new episode of Photography Behind the Scenes. I was out one evening catching the last bit of light of the sunset and got these 3 photos to start with. I was planning on a night shoot wandering around a quiet neighbourhood and capturing scenes in the artificial light, but first I started with these, which turned out pretty cool, I think. I really like the silhouette aesthetic here with the concentration on the background, but to keep things interesting, I added my own silhouette into frame, which I think works wonderfully and it adds more interest to the photograph. I also got this photo of me on my bike, which worked pretty nicely as well, I find. I love how the straight road functions as a leading line to the arch at the back, and I as the subject am positioned right inside there as the point of interest. It just seems to work quite effectively on a compositional level. Shortly after that, the last light of the day had vanished and I was riding my bike on the edge of town on the lookout for some interesting lighting situations. At this time, I hadn't even gotten my first shot in the dark yet, and I wasn't entirely sure what I was actually looking for. As I came here, I felt pulled towards that house on the other side of the road, and so I decided that this was going to be my first shot. This is the result, and I'm afraid it didn't quite work the way I was hoping it would. What intrigued me, and still does, is how one side of the house is illuminated whereas the other is in the shade, but in that shade is that window which glows from inside. The composition is fine, but the captivation I felt doesn't really come across here. Maybe it's because the light from the left is not working, not sure though. Right after, I spotted that big shed behind the house that I just photographed. I liked the sideway light that was hitting its front, so I tried to set up a shot. This is it, and I think we've got an improvement here. I think the light here is much more interesting in the way that it focuses a lot on that spot in the middle of the frame where the shed has its doors. Imagine though how cool it would be if that door were open and something were going on in there, but unfortunately it's closed. Nevertheless, I think the subject is alright. Then I continued down the road, and on my left I found another small building that caught me because the light that was hitting it seemed to have a mysterious cinematic quality. I tried to get a shot of the building itself, but then found a way to frame it in a wider composition and went with that. Here it is, and I think this turned out beautiful. So I hope you can see now what I meant when I was speaking of the light. It feels a bit mysterious because we can't see the source, but something seems to be going on around the corner. I love how the light focuses on that door, which makes it seem more intentionally lit. And then concerning the composition, I'm so glad that I tried the wider shot and found this angle with the bush in the foreground. I think the composition works so well here. I love how the bush is this corner that adds a sort of subframe to the bottom. Additionally, it is being lit in this cold manner by the street lamp, which I think is a vital part of making this work because I believe it would be far less interesting if the bush were in the dark without any light. And then apart from that, so many elements here come together so conveniently somehow, such as the other bush on the right of the frame, which fills that part of the composition, and the edge of the house on the left, which adds again to that subframe that concentrates the viewer on the smaller building in the middle. I'm really happy with this outcome. Then I continued on the road and came to a spot where the colour of the street lamps changed. I saw a decent opportunity here to get a pretty simple photograph of the road itself because the changing temperature of the light here is already a nice point of interest. To add a little bit of spice though, I decided to add myself in frame. So here is the result. I think it's another pretty decent shot. I like how the changing light worked out and the way that my position seems to fit quite well in that transitory place where the blue hue slowly starts to fade. I was not entirely sure about the house on the right, thinking it might end up being distracting, but I now find it fits there nicely. I think that a human in a frame automatically has the attention as the subject simply because it's a human, and so the house doesn't feel like a distraction. Instead, I think it frames the scene quite nicely. Something else I enjoy here is the distance I got from the camera, which now pictures me pretty small in frame, conveying a sense of solitude in a seemingly empty or sleeping town. Then I continued my bike ride and came to another spot where I saw some possible compositions in the streets on the side. The first composition I found was a house on the opposite side, lit by a nearby street lamp. This is what I got, and it's a decent shot, I think. I feel good about the slightly tighter framing I chose here, which makes the composition feel compact in a way. Nothing here seems empty or out of place, it all fits somehow. Then I decided to get another shot of that house and the street, but from a different angle, and this time add myself into frame again. This is the result, and I think this worked out great. The light in combination with the tree has this wonderful spotlight effect, so that the tree casts a big shadow on the road in the foreground, effectively leading the focus into the middle, where the light hits the road and now also me. Also, the balance between environment and subject seems to work quite nicely here. Then, from where I was standing, I turned to the street behind me because I had already spotted an interesting scene on this side as well. It wasn't anything overly special, quite simple actually. A road with a house at the corner and a couple lamps to light up the area. Also, there was an empty space on the street, so I ran into frame myself again. This is the result, and I think it's pretty cool. The scene feels intriguing again, with its dark patches on the sides from the bushes framing the corner of the street and the house. The glowing windows really add some life to the house and to give it a character. Also, I'm happy with my own position here, which worked out really smoothly. Something I'm not too sure about though are the lamps. I appreciate all the light that they give off, but I think the two lights in the middle are just a bit too much maybe, because they're just big bright circles that distract a little from the rest of the scene. Next, I rode into the street that I had previously photographed to check out that neighbourhood. It was about 11 PM at this time, and the area was so quiet it was even a bit scary. There were no sounds, the only thing I could hear was my bicycle. Anyway, I didn't really find anything intriguing here, so I ended up going to another spot where I came across a path that led through some trees, which looked interesting. This is the result, and it's okay. I enjoy the scene, but I think that this photograph is by far not as strong as the previous ones. Not exactly sure why though. Maybe it was the human element of the houses, which contributed to the intrigue in the previous photos that now is missing. Then, at this point, I was making my way back home already, but I hadn't yet packed up my camera in case I happened to find something, and I did. I found a garage with an interesting light and shadow on it, which I wanted to capture. This is it, and it's okay. I like the light and the shadow and the house on the right, but I'm not so sure about the left side of the image. Most of that side is just darkness, and then there's that car, which just doesn't seem to fit in there so well. Next, I was about to continue my bike ride, but immediately stopped again because I found a possible composition of a signpost. This is the shot, and I think it's okay. What caught me here were the various lines in the photo and how they interact. Also, I like the lighting on the signpost, and so I set up this simple composition which I think captures these aspects effectively, except maybe the tree on the left. I'm feeling a slight distracting force from that tree, which I think might come from its size. It takes up way more space in frame than the signpost, which creates an imbalance. But overall, I think it's still a decent shot. And with that shot done, I continued my way back home and soon after decided to pack up the camera and call the end of the evening. This was a great session in my opinion. It started off with a little bit of light left from the sunset, and then I was lucky to be able to find so many intriguing scenes in the dark. These are my favorites of the night. Let me know what you think, which are your favorites. I'm always curious to read about your thoughts. Anyway, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, I'd appreciate a like. Consider subscribing if you haven't yet, and I'll see you again next week in the next video. Until then, goodbye.